welcome along, and thanks for joining us on what promises to be a very exciting Fair Luxury open house event. My name's Anna Luca and I'm a member of Fair Luxury, and this evening we're co-hosting with Christina Miller of Christina Miller Consultancy. Christina has been a very vocal advocate for many years for subjects such as elimination of mercury within artisanal mining, and generally using her expertise to campaign for a fairer and more sustainable jewellery industry as a whole. And then also presenting this evening is Greg Valerio, whose work as a social entrepreneur goes back many years. He's been involved in and seen come to fruition the Fair Trade, Fair Mind, Fair Day, and has been working this time on another amazing adventure, which has been in progress for about 10 years now, and so it's a really exciting time to launch that and talk about it and bring it to you. It's called PeaceGold, and so this evening we're going to be looking at what it is, what makes it different from other initiatives, and how you can all get involved. So without further ado, I will hand you over to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. That's fantastic. And I am delighted to be here this evening, as it is for myself. And thank you all very much for joining this call. I have to say I'm quite overwhelmed by the numbers that sort of like subscribe to get on board with the call. So I'm also aware it's being recorded, so I have to be careful what I say. But it's great to be able to meet with you and to begin the long introduction of PeaceGold to our movement. And before I get into the details and pop the slide up, I just need to give a big thank you to Fair Luxury and to Christina Miller and her team for really doing all the background work on pulling this together and doing all the wonderful promotion online, etc. Like I say, it's a really, it's just amazing to know that so many people are interested in hearing about what we have been endeavoring to do. Also, I need to just note at the front end two organizations that are very much foundational to what is now PeaceGold as a social enterprise. And one of those is Peace Direct, which is a UK-based peace-building organization, and they work internationally in conflict zones around the world, focusing on peace, conflict resolution, and how do we build community cohesion to prevent conflict. Not every disagreement needs to be a conflict. And then the Center for Resolution Conflict, which is the Congolese peace-building organization that do a lot of work on demobilization, the demilitarization of and demobbing, essentially, of militia groups. And then they work with victims, sexual victims of the violence there in the country, as well as demobilizing and reintegrating child soldiers. And it was really CRC's problem of how do we reintegrate these demobilized and demilitarized adults, male and female, back into civil society, back into productivity, that sparked what we now understand as PeaceGold. So without further ado, what I shall do is I'll pop the slide up, hopefully making sure that everybody can see it. I think that's the one. Is that all coming up for everybody? Big thumbs up from Anna. That's brilliant. So PeaceGold, as I was saying, it's been going for about 10 years now. I'll skip through the initial stuff. That's kind of where we want to go on our conversation this evening, looking at some of the analysis that we've done, the challenges and the solutions, as well as some of the social impact that is coming about as a result of this. But essentially, the challenge that we faced when we began the process of looking at the Eastern DRC was, how do we not just reintegrate ex-militia, but how do we build out a process that can allow communities that have been the victims of the violence to build not just peace building, but a whole sustainable framework going forward. And as you know, the DRC is a complicated country. It's got complex situation historically. And we recognized very quickly that, and this is all information that was flowing out of the community really, that they were asking for stability. You know, they're living on gold mines. They need stability. They were looking for a solution to the problem. So for 10 years, we worked to understand the problem and validate its creation. And we worked brilliantly with EPRM for 2 years. And then we were also funded out of the US by a Peace Building Social Innovation Fund. And for 5 years, we worked on a very simple model of reintegration, formalizing cooperatives, demercurying the process, i.e. mercury-free systems, and then building out the platform that would begin to export the gold. So that was our challenge. How do we turn the conflict gold narrative into a force for peace and prosperity? And as we looked at this, we realized that everything in that region of the world is geared up for mitigating the conflict. So you have rules and regulations, you have national legislation, international legislation, but all that legislation is defined by the conflict. And there was very little definition going on around, well, how do we use the product gold to define the peace, to define the prosperity, to define the future, rather than creating systems which mitigate and hold back, and obviously, let's be honest, are almost impossible for ordinary artisanal miners to reach that level of legal compliance due to all the difficulties which they challenge with. We need a process which takes the gold and puts peace in front of the gold. So the gold's to fund the peace. And as a result of our 5 years worth of work, we proposed a social enterprise that not only tapped into the genius of the ethical jewelry movement, but also tapped into the desire on the ground for peace, community cohesion, community development, and a circular economy that took the value of the gold. And it's not an exaggeration to say that the levels of gold, the quantity of gold that they have in that region is phenomenal. I mean, when it rains, people are basically picking up flakes of gold off the sides of roads. It's extraordinary. I've seen photographs of 1 kilo nuggets. It's extraordinary, the volume, and therefore the value. So we really looked at how do we move from a transactional economy, a linear transactional economy, to a more circular shared ownership model? Because again, with looking at my history in the ethical jewelry movement and working with artisanals, you know, once the miners have sold their product, they have no stake in what becomes of that. And as we know, as our products move further towards consumers, they attribute more value. So how can we create a more equitable circular economy? So that really was our analysis of the challenge on a very top level. And obviously that will also summarize it there as well in a lot of detail. And so we came up with this model, and to move from a non-profit investment. PeaceGold was a non-profit activity, which meant we always knew at the end of 5 years we were going to face a funding cliff edge. And like so many other initiatives around the world that have sought to engage the artisanal sector, so much of the money that has gone into that has been development money, which obviously is time-bound and very restricted in its scope and its application. And yet all of the community cooperatives that we began to work with, they were all great entrepreneurs. They were all business people. They all wanted to grow and develop and formalize. So we began to articulate a model, a social enterprise model that would essentially consist of 3 principal building blocks. One are the PeaceGold cooperatives themselves. They are the grassroots, community-based organizations that mine gold. And that's what they do. That's what they know how to do. They're very good at it. But they are challenged in the sense that they're locked into the informality that we're all familiar with on this call, the informality of that world. They wanted to be able to export. So we then talked about creating a Congolese-based company that we obviously registered in the Congo that will hold 2 licenses. One is a gold export license or a comptoir license, which effectively gives you permission to, through your negotiations, to buy gold, aggregate it into a larger volume, and then export that legally, subject obviously to national regulations, ICGLR regulations and OECD compliances. So that was a fairly straightforward request. And then we began to reflect on the challenges that we faced with all the other mining cooperatives that wanted to start to become a part of our process. And that's where I get very humbled, actually, by what is happening there, because we have done no publicity for PeaceGold on the ground, and yet every month we are being approached by new cooperatives saying, we want to get on board, we want to get on board, what do we need to do, can you help us, etc., etc. We started with 2 as guinea pig cooperatives, essentially, and we're now running at 15, and I know there are more on the way. So we then had the government license holder, a company called Sakimo, approach us. This was about 2 years ago, and said, would you come and work with us? We have a problem with mercury. We have a problem with child labor. We have a problem with illegal informal operations. We have no gravitas. We have no mechanism for addressing those issues, but clearly you are doing something here. Will you come and work with us? So we've articulated establishing our own mining operation, which is a big step, a petite mine, small scale mine, in partnership with Sakimo, which we can build out as our educational model for all of the cooperatives in the territory and in the district and beyond. Working on the belief and working on the knowledge that, participation is the best form of learning. So we set that up. We set it up as a model, mercury-free, artisanal operation, small-scale operation, and then other cooperatives that want to become a part of the process come and learn and participate alongside, and then we help and support them. So essentially, PeaceGold Congo will hold 2 licenses. One is the comptoir license, the other is a license to mine. And then, importantly, we wanted to establish a company outside of the Congo that could help, 1, to support, B, to finance, C, to really do the marketing and the publicity and all the relationships that we wanted with the rest of the world and the international ethical jewelry system and the refiners and all the rest of it. So PeaceGold CIC is a community interest company. It's UK registered as it stands, and it does exactly what we say on the slide there. It's to really look at supporting. And there are some very practical reasons for why we need an external company outside of the Congo to assist in its growth and development. Notwithstanding, Congo essentially is a red flag country for payments, for banking, for all kinds of things. So there's a lot of support and expertise that's going to have to go in over and above what we can build out in the Congo. But essentially, we are a set of groups, community-based organizations, networks that are linking together with that sole purpose of building out peace. We did not start as a responsible mining intervention. We started as a peace-building solution to a problem using gold as the mechanism for potentially funding it. That's what we offer product-wise. That is what we're going to be able to deliver. It's a standard offer in many respects. I mean, everybody on the call that has any background in jewelry or in supply chain management or refiners, etc., will understand. We can deliver gold doré to refiners. We can deliver gold bullion to jewelers and goldsmiths and jewelry brands. And then I'm basically throwing in my jewelry offering. I'm throwing that into PeaceGold to be solely owned by PeaceGold in terms of being able to offer a classic, fair, fine jewelry offering for customers. So that's essentially what we're doing. The beautiful thing about gold is you never have a problem selling it. And we've already got customers, particularly in the refiner section, first off-takers that have basically said, we will buy every gram you can deliver. So, when we came to fill out the business plan, you always get to that, how are you going to market and sell your product? It's like, well, I don't have to have a section on that because I've sold it already. But obviously what we are going to do is develop that and bring that to the jewelers and the jewelry profession, say, look, here, you can participate in this, you can be a part of this, and you can make this thing an international success. We've looked obviously at competitors and collaborators. I think it's really important this stage to state, we look at fair trade and we look at fair mind. They're not competitors for us. We're not coming into a market with a view to undermine existing certified systems. Obviously, they're systems which I personally know well, was involved in helping to create in their formation. I think we are very much living in a different space. Our economic model is different. We're not coming to the market as a premium product. We have a framework of reference. We have a financial framework that allows us to basically get the gold bullion to jewelers for about 106% of fix, i.e. at the price of recycled. So if we have a competitor, it's the recycled market. But like I say, we don't really view it as competition per se. I think the value proposition that we have is very unique. And, I see it very much as complementary to existing ethical certification systems. But our pricing is going to be in and around recycled prices. So that gives you a little bit of idea of the landscape that we've looked at and certainly have experience in. So how does it work? I mean, that basically is a nice little diagram from ground up to the jewelers. We've been doing a lot of work on the banking system, the security system behind all of this, refining. We've got a guaranteed operator, first off taker, as I've said. So that's just a little diagram of how we will go about doing it. We've now formed the community interest company, and we are now moving on to form the Congolese-based operation. So that's what we're about, and that's how we're going to build this out. I mentioned a bit earlier about the cooperatives. When we started our process back in 2017, our funded process back in 2017, we started with two cooperatives, Komolobani and Komotape. They really were our guinea pigs, and they were fantastic. I've been so impressed with them. Very difficult context, but their dedication and their attention to detail in terms of what they have to do and the process that they have to go through, and of course the patience that they have to do all of this, has been very awe-inspiring. So we decided quite early on that we would use the craft code as the essential building blocks for how we were going to do the formalization process. It worked very well. It was very contextual in that context. We had conversations with the craft team, and we did our first set of reports, particularly Komolobani, and they did their craft code report. And we've articulated a replication process. So over the course of the 5 years of working on the ground, we've developed a replication process for how do we go from an informal, inefficient cooperative structure to a properly formalized, legal, organized, able to deliver in a mercury-free way, addressing all of the social challenges on the ground, which are considerable in terms of gender equality, child labor. How do we do that? And we work really closely with CRC. CRC essentially are our implementation partner when it comes to building out this movement of cooperatives. Because we have, and into this peace building process, into this craft code journey that we take our mining groups on, we have also added a whole peace building component. And that peace building component really is the foundation block upon which we then build everything else. And that's training in conflict resolution. It's doing internal community dialogue, external community dialogues, regional dialogues, as well as the more formal demobilization and demilitarization processes that CRC are involved with. Why do we use CRC? One, because they were the originators of the process. They've got all of the learned experience of how you do this. And secondly, and most importantly, they have created on the ground and have on the ground a high trust environment. PeaceGold is not coming into a new context. It is emerging from within an existing context. And we are one end of a community-based process. And that high trust environment allows us to work with provincial authorities. It allows us to work with civil society organizations. It allows us to work with local community chiefdoms. It allows us to work with the cooperatives, because they all trust CRC, because they have huge respect on the ground for the work that they have been doing. So that's the 5 steps that we take our partner cooperatives through. Obviously, it's a very top level for the sake of this call, but that gives you a very good idea of how we are progressing with them. We've worked, and I'm going to introduce Justin towards the end of my presentation, with Innovest. They are a Guernsey-based organization that have really been helping us to flesh out the social impact model. We've got all this accumulated learning on the ground. how do we wrap this up into a framework which then becomes understandable to the rest of the world? And as you can see, that is essentially our impact model: conflict resolution and reintegration, artisanal mining formalization, child labor eradication. What I would say on the child labor issue, which is a unique situation that I've experienced for the first time, where we are based in Ituri province around Bunia, there's 500,000 internally displaced people in UN camps. And almost all the children that we have come across that have been in and around and gleaning from the edges of small-scale mining sites are IDP children coming from those camps. There is no formal education for them. Their situation is pretty desperate, and so this is their way of, you know, earning 50 cents, $1 if they're lucky a day, just to keep the family ticking over. So part of our child labor eradication strategy is having a remediation process. So every cooperative has a child labor officer. The cooperative is trained to identify child labor, and they're trained into what do you do when you spot a kid around a mine. And then we've also managed to, as it says there, 950 kids into school over the last 5 years. I don't think all of those are kids that we've remediated from our mine sites, but what we do know is that that 950 represents the work that CRC have done in child labor remediation in the entire area. So it's a system that has worked very well. Obviously, mercury we know is a huge problem with you know, is a huge problem in small scale mining. It's systemic, it's cultural. We took our mining communities to Uganda in the first year of our initiative. We introduced them to what was the Fair Trade Gold certified gold mine in Busia. Miners got on like a house on fire. We introduced them to the mercury-free tech that we've put in. And we then put some mercury-free tech into both of the cooperatives, which they've used brilliantly. And their production rates are now about 20% what they were before. So I'm really happy that, you know, all PeaceGold that comes to market will be by nature systemically mercury-free. And obviously we've developed systems of production in terms of gold processing, which we can not just say that, claim that, but we will also be able to verify it. And then obviously we've got the alignment with international standards, using craft code as our building blocks. So that's our social impact model, essentially. Then we've got a theory of change, which kind of takes it down onto another level. What's the problem? What's the input? What's the activity? What's the output? What's the outcomes? And we've got a little flow diagram there, beginning to help people to move through how we're doing it. And obviously around this, we will be putting in a monitoring and evaluation framework and a learning framework alongside the auditing that will have to be done, not just for legal compliance reasons, but also for integrity of communication. And those will be third-party audits that we will be undertaking. But essentially that little slide there gives you a very good introduction and process of how we're going about delivering what is essentially a very complex situation, and how we're building towards achieving the goals that we have. That's our mercury-free production. It's not as complicated, I think, as sometimes everybody assumes that it is, as long as you've got the right tech. Gravity is a wonderful thing. Micro sluices are fantastic. The finer you can get the material, the better. And because of the remoteness of our locations, if we don't have mains electric, which is highly unlikely, the whole system works off a diesel generator. We put 2 systems into the Congo to field test them. They've worked really well. So we get to where we are today. I'm delighted to announce that we're now up and alive. It has been 10 years in the creating. It's been a long journey, not just for me on a personal level, but for all the communities which I've had the privilege to work with. And we've started the process of launching, and we were really keen to launch the initiative with the jewelers. The ethical jewelry movement is a thing. It exists. I've been really humbled stepping back into it in the last 12 months, 18 months, as I have. I said to Christina on a call not so long ago, when I was talking to her about, well, I'm thinking of sticking my head back in and having a look around and seeing what's going on and where is everybody. And I said to her, is it going to be the same old people? And she said to me, no, it won't be. There are so many more people out there that are moving towards and are involved with and pioneering in ethical jewelry. So, which is fantastic to know. So we are coming before you today. You're the first group that we have spoken to about our launch, about our initiative. This is kind of our first public introduction. We wanted to do it with you as the jewelers, because without the jewelers actively participating in PeaceGold, we won't be able to achieve the voice to market that the peace and justice of our jewelry deserves. I'm very aware that if you sell gold to a refiner, there's no story in that. They just buy the gold and that's it. And then you do it all over again. The story, the oxygen, the transformational change, how we change our industry, how we change our trade, how we change our craft, how we move the whole dynamic of the conversation forward, and change it so it becomes embedded structurally, is through the voice of the jewelers to the market, to the consumers, and to the trade. And we know that our process, our journey as a startup social enterprise is going to be a long one. So we are not in this for the short term. This is not a charitable initiative. This is not NGO funding led. This is a social enterprise business which is going to use gold to fund the peace and community development on the ground. It is complicated. I'm not going to lie to you. It is a complex scenario, and we have a lot of work still to do, but we've done enough to get launched. And we want to come to you and we want to ask for your support, and we want to ask for your financial support, and we want to ask for your active participation in what we are doing. So we are proposing, we want to propose raising $50,000, which will give PeaceGold enough seed money to get the thing off the ground in the Congo, and also do all of the legal requirements that we are going to have to undertake to really bed this thing down. So we're asking you to become members of PeaceGold. We're going to set aside, and I have to caveat what I say at this point, subject to a big impact investor coming on board, and obviously subject to the legal reviews that we will have to undertake. But our principle is to set 10% aside of the company for early jeweler adoption. So we're asking you to subscribe, to buy a stake on subscription, which can then be cashed in at that big capital event that we will have down the line. The rights that you will have as PeaceGold members will be the rights to use the material when it comes to market, and obviously you'll get first option on that, and then also the rights to stamp the jewelry. And critically, we recognize that we want to develop a very high level marketing suite for this. We don't want to shilly-shally around in the shallows. We want to develop a very high-level marketing suite for this, and we will be calling on the jewelry community to help us shape that, not just the narrative and the collateral, but also to help us shape the strategy of the impact. And at this point, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to introduce Justin, because one of the things that this 50,000 will do for us is it will help us to finish off our infrastructure models, which gets us in front of the big social investment houses. And Justin can explain a little bit more about how we do that. So Justin, over to you for a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Greg, and lovely to be on this call and meet the wonderful community of ethical jewelers. I won't take much time because I've been tracking the questions, and there's some amazing questions in there that Greg will want to dive into. So I think other than just to say this endeavor, PeaceGold, whilst being, I think, deeply interesting to the ethical jewelry community, is also something that is extremely interesting to the ethical investment community. Artisanal mining, let's take sub-Saharan Africa. Artisanal mining is actually the second largest employer in rural areas after agriculture. Estimated upwards of 2.5 million people in Africa are engaged in artisanal employment, typically informal, unskilled, underpaid, with all the social challenges that Greg called out. And for social investors who have a strong interest in supporting peace, justice, economic development in Africa, to not engage in artisanal mining and not to recognize that actually investing in improving rural livelihoods cannot be done without engaging with artisanal mining is a huge missed opportunity. So we, working with Greg, working with our community of impact investors, see that PeaceGold offers a really, really interesting model for ethical investors, mostly from private investors, so foundations, family offices, charitable trusts, and in time, potentially also government funders like development finance institutions. It offers them an opportunity to invest into a model that can contribute to peace and development and contribute to long-term sustainability in these mining communities, and job creation and fair wages, reduction in child labor, as Greg mentioned. So I think a lot of our work really is working with Greg to position PeaceGold, as he mentioned, as not a charitable endeavor, but as a commercially sustainable opportunity for social investors to support this business. I'll leave it there and hand back to Greg because of the questions. I think one thing, Greg, from my side that you, I think, did not perhaps touch on completely is the community interest company and what the community interest company means for the miners as being shareholders in ultimately the end product and sharing in that profit.
Thanks, Justin. No, you're absolutely right. I haven't, and I'll just to nail into that one right now. So the reason why we've gone for a KIC, community interest company, is there is an asset lock on that company, so it can't be asset stripped. And critically, we have to, by law, because it gets written into the constitution of the company, have a community interest that we invest profits back into. So 20% of our cake will be specifically targeted towards working with artisanal miners, formalizing artisanal mining groups, peace building, conflict resolution, and working in conflict affected high risk areas of the world. So and that is basically baked into the pie. Our PeaceGold Congo initiative is going to be a 50-50 partnership between, obviously, the CIC, PeaceGold CIC, where a lot of the social investment money will come in at first stage, and the mining communities. So if you're a PeaceGold cooperative, you are a credible, sizable chunk of that comptoir operation. So essentially, you sell your gold to yourself, and you share in the benefits of that comptoir with your own communities. And the other thing to add, every PeaceGold cooperative agrees to set aside 1% of their revenue, not profit, of their revenue to community development initiatives. And we created a community development social committee, which has its own bank account, very much adopting the principles of the Fair Trade Premium Committees, which the cooperatives, civil society organizations, and local communities sit on that committee. They identify their needs and they fund their own development. So there's no paternal intervention going on at that level. It's genuinely community-based, bottom-up, felt needs approach. So that's just a little bit to add on. So final slides. So we're asking you to become a member of the PeaceGold family. We're asking you to make a pledge of finance to support us, to put the seed funding that we need into play so we can begin to build out the next stage of our life and development in the Congo. We have now established a mechanism for doing that. So I'm pleased to say that our crowdfunding website is alive, and it's live as we speak. So we will put that in the chat for you all later in terms of where you can visit. And when I say it's live, it only went live an hour ago. It literally was right up at the last minute. And then we will be obviously receipting any pledges, names and addresses, etc., and contact details, because we want to build out this thing as a movement for peace, a movement for justice, a movement for equitable relationships with the source of our material. So yeah, I think I will halt there. Thank you all for listening so brilliantly. I've not had the chat open because it gets distracting on my screen. So I will stop screen sharing, jump back into the main chat, and hand back over to Anna and Christina in terms of how we field the questions.
There we go. Unmute for me. Great. Just waiting for Greg's screen. There we go. Everyone's back. Hello. Wow, look at all those questions. How incredible. Thank you so much for that, Greg. That's amazing. Yeah, so I don't know about Christine, if you've got any particular things you'd like to ask there or clarify?
I really don't. I think the questions in the chat actually cover the subjects that I was going to ask for elaboration on for everyone. So I think we're covering it with the audience's questions. It's fantastic.
I'd like to just ask one, but I haven't been monitoring the questions. However, is this the model that you talked about really developed, and that's a really strong, robust model? Is that something that you can see being transferable to other situations, other environments, other resources even?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we were very aware of when we were doing all of our sort of like field testing, for want of a better expression, is how replicable is what we're doing. It's partly one of the reasons why, for example, we adopted craft code, because it's a really good tool for building out with small scale mining groups. And, you know, as a testimony to its replicability, we're already we haven't even launched in the Congo formally as a social enterprise, but we've already grown from 2 cooperatives to 15. I know there's another tranche that are waiting for the next trip. They want to have conversations. That's just locally in the one territory. We know Sakimo's principal invitation to us was they saw what we were doing and they said, can you replicate with us, please? Because, you know, what do we do with all this chaos? But also I have had other inquiries now from 2 other African operators, one in Uganda and another from another province in Congo, that is asking to come and have a conversation about how they could replicate or adopt or get involved. So I don't think it's particularly, it's not contextual just to our situation. I think the context, I think the principle is replicable, and I don't think it's locked into gold. I mean, I'm not an expert in other minerals, certainly other mined minerals, and certainly the 3Ts, etc. But my understanding of how that thing works as well is it could work. Because I think that, again, sounding like a broken record, what is attractive to most people in this part of the world is that we build in peace building at the very foundation, at the front end, at the core, and at the back end. And then the whole economic cycle goes back into community development, peace building.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's like that is the core of it. It's not just like, here's the mineral, let's, you know, what can we do with it? It's like, this is what we need to do. How are we going to do it? So that's fantastic. So we'll go over to all the questions. I should just say that obviously we've got tons and tons of brilliant stuff coming in. So what we doubt we'll have time to get to all of it at all, but Greg will take some questions after, and we'll feed back his responses. We're keeping him monitoring it all, and we'll ask any unanswered questions afterwards. Send them to Greg and he'll feed it back to share it with the group once we send out the recording. Okay, so I think Liz is going to be the questionnaire.
I am.
So we'll just hand over to you.
May I pop in on one thing really fast? I'm really sorry to interrupt, but we have competing links being dropped in the chat. One is for the crowdfunder link and the other is for the pledge. Greg, can you clarify which you would like to draw folks' attention to right now? And we'll make sure to emphasize the right one, because otherwise it's going to get confusing on your end to keep up with people.
Yes, thank you. Essentially, the link that Christian's just posted up in the chat, that link is to the crowdfunding page. So if you're wanting to make a pledge, or if you want to make a contribution today, for example, or tomorrow, whenever, that's where you will go, and that's where we facilitate the taking of payments and details. We have another link here, which is the form that Fair Luxury and Christina have put up, which will be for capturing everybody's interest. So basically what we're asking you to do is to fill out the Google, I can't see it from where I'm sitting, but fill out that Google Doc with all of your details, and any pledge that you want to make at this stage. And then if you're ready to make that pledge and exact on it, please go to the crowdfunding website. And the other thing I would say about the crowdfunding website is, obviously, you may want to come on board and help to give it more oxygen and push it out to your networks and do all of that. So do feel free to get on board, and we want to get that out to as many people as we possibly can.
Great, thank you for that. And we will share all those links in a follow-up email after the open house as well. Thank you for all of that information, Greg. The general consensus in the chat is that it's a really interesting program and you've shared some really useful information. So we'll dive into all the questions because we've got quite a few. So first question, if you're ready, from Christina Villegas from packed is, has PeaceGold been successful at exports yet? What does your supply chain look like from cooperative to export and to refiner? I know that you mentioned that you'd started at 2 and you have now 15, but would you be able to expand on that?
Yeah, again, so at the moment we have, well, anywhere between 70 to 80 kilos of production a month. The government legislation in the Congo for comptoirs is that you have to export 100 kilos a month minimum. So, and we are now well, and that was a piece of legislation that came in last year. So we had to change the model on the ground a little bit. But currently, between the 15 that we are in conversations with, we've got between 70 to 80. When we introduce our own concession, we will be able to add between 10 to 15 to that. So already on paper, we're close to the 100 kilos. Cooperatives in Congo come in all shapes and sizes. We've got some that represent 2,000 to 3,000 members. We have some that are 20 or 30. I haven't got the figure to hand in terms of the final tally, but what I can say is every cooperative that gets registered within the system obviously has to submit their registration. But I know it runs into the very, well, 9,000, probably as many as 10 to 15,000 people that are directly involved with the cooperatives that we're involved with. And obviously that doesn't include the communities that they are a part of. The supply chain is, I mean, essentially what is PeaceGold? It is a simple gold business. When you boil the whole thing down, it's a social enterprise in gold. We have a system in place which involves the aggregation of so the miners are delivering to us on a small basis, on a regular small basis. We aggregate the volumes, obviously in a secure location. All transactions are done bank to bank. There is no cash transaction in our process. The way the system works in Congo is you then have the government come out to verify what you are about to export. We have a due diligence system in place that we use to essentially map the entire supply chain. It's called Data Stake, and that's something which came out of the Zabu Safi initiative. It works extremely well. It's a very detailed due diligence platform which we can GPS locate every single pit associated with every single cooperative. We have an off-taker that will take everything that we have based in Andorra. They will refine, they will fabricate for jewelers accordingly, and they will distribute. And we expect to have we will have a distribution framework in the UK, and I don't think it will stop there. So the exciting thing about it obviously is volume, but that is also the challenge. But we do know very practically that the model that we are articulating here ticks all of the Congolese critical Congolese legal requirements. And obviously their initiative, they want to move people from artisanal to small scale and formalize the sector. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Christina.
Yeah, it did actually, and it actually answered her second question around kind of how you deal with the skepticism of provenance claims as well. So it's very efficient.
Look, I mean, I've been around this for long enough to know that there's always going to be some doubting Thomases in the room. I'm not saying they're on this call, but you know, they're going to be out there. I mean, we've already had, for example, we've already had some challenges. For example, just registering the company here in the UK. The Companies House didn't understand what we were doing. They didn't get the artisanal mining thing. And when you say the word Congo, everybody basically shits their pants. So, you know, we've had that with banks as well. We finally got a bank account open, but I've been to 3 or 4 banks, and as soon as you say Congo, they say No way, Jose. So we know there are detractors out there, and nobody from our end of things is sitting here saying it's going to be easy. We are articulating this as a journey. It's a long journey. We're going to be saying that to any potential partners, any members, any investors that come on board. There's no short-termism in this. It's going to take us at least 5 years to build the model out on the ground, very practically, from end to end. And obviously, it's going to take us another 5 years to mature it. So from an investment perspective, a 5 to 10 year period, I think, is a reasonable way of looking at this. The beautiful thing about gold is it is a cash business. It's a cash positive business. And the numbers, the raw data that we've looked at is very positive. And the returns that come back to community development, that is going to pose us another challenge, because too much too soon can not be a good thing, and too little too late can also be very demoralizing. So we need a lot of wisdom in how we deliver on the ground. But the beautiful, as I say, going back to our high trust environment, we have a model which has been shaped by the communities on the ground, so they're invested.
Okay, great, thank you. So just talking about other stumbling blocks and I guess stumbling blocks that other ASM Gold initiatives have been having. Christina's question is also around, she said that we hear that refiners need like 100 kilograms per month minimum. Which refiners are you working with, and how are you planning on doing the pricing? Would you be able to kind of speak to like minimum volumes required by the DRC and the government for international export?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very simple. The government say if you want a contour license, you got to export 100 kilos a month. That's the law.
That's the law, yeah.
So our conversation. So when I do my presentations to the Congolese government, hopefully in June, that's when we're scheduling them. I've got to be able to sit in front of them with the other guys and say, this is how we're going to do it. Now we have an answer to that. We know how we're going to do it. But that's the basics. There's no get out of jail free card on that.
Great, thank you. I think just switching focus a little bit, and there's been a lot of questions from sort of independent jewelers that really want to get involved. And they've all said, really interesting, amazing information so far. But can you talk a bit about the price the miners will sell at and how it's beneficial to get to them without a premium? And what does the membership really mean to this kind of the small independent jewelers?
Well, to deal with the last question first, the membership is about obviously becoming a member. You'll get first access to the material when it comes to market. You'll get access to all the marketing suite that we will develop. So we have scheduled to do some quite high level branding around PeaceGold. PeaceGold is a registered trademark, by the way. I've neglected to say that. So we took a leaf out of the Diamond book, and when we started, we registered PeaceGold as a trademark, so it couldn't be nicked by some rich entrepreneur. I.e., it's available to all the community, not one. Well, what can I say? So we have a registered trademark, and we're going to build that out as a global narrative, global brand. And that's going to go into, and that's going to be a consumer narrative. That's the aim, that's the target. In terms of price to miners and what we are, well, I say we are asking, what they are offering is probably a better way of putting it. I am not going to answer that question, because that is a question I will answer offline with the individual, because that's a business issue. But what I can say with some clarity is that we can get the gold to market at about 106. And because of the structure of the companies and the ownership model, we will be delivering more value back to community development than if we had gone for another business model. And I would also add to that, and I think this is very important for us to understand, the miners, and this comes from the miners themselves, they're not, the finances, the money issue is not their primary issue here. What is their issue? Their issue is stability. That is almost universal in all of our conversations with those mining communities in this particular part of the world. They are desperate to get out of the very, very sketchy informal market in that word. They want a stable partner. That's their plea. That's their prayer. Give us stability. And what PeaceGold has been designed to do is to offer the stability of trade partnership on the ground.
Okay, and I think Anna in the chat has just clarified that. So she said essentially what we'll be doing is we'll be pledging as a donation to the seed funding and then getting first access to the material. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Great, thank you. And another question just quickly come into the chat as well from Natasha. Will there be any updates or a timeline provided once there will be PeaceGold distribution in the USA?
Yes, there will be. That's partly why we want everybody to fill out the form which Fair Luxury and Christina have put together, because we can then translate that into a substantial mailing list. And then we will be making regular communications with everybody on that mailing list in regards to where we're at in our process, where we are, how close we are to delivering material, you know, when it's going to come to market. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the whole picture for us is really good communication with jewelers, members. You know, obviously we'll have our social impact investors, as well as the communities on the ground, and then internally and operationally we've got to have a seamless communication between the UK as it stands at the moment and the Congolese operation.
Great, thanks, Greg. I'm just going to check through the chat real quick, see if I've missed any questions. I think we're all good. I think we've covered those questions.
Wow.
Did anybody else have any questions?
I'd love to pop in if I can. We do have a very broad range of business sizes represented on the call, of folks that might be interested. And so for some, even a financial pledge can be too much. So can we run through the range of things? So if folks can't make a financial contribution, but they're really interested in supporting this project, what sounds easy is to share that this exists and talk about the reality that artisanal miners face in your work and in your jewelry. So Greg, I'm going to launch that back to you for that first thing, like what can you do if you're not contributing? And then folks would also like to know the minimum pledge amount and, you know, giving just a little, reiterating that, giving a little bit more perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm uniquely aware that we talk a lot about small scale miners and their vulnerability, but also I'm also aware that, you know, we have a lot of small jewelers in the world that buy small amounts on a regular basis and essentially don't have a lot of money floating around in the system. So we didn't want to marginalize either end by putting in high minimums. So essentially, on the crowdfunding site, there's an option for you to make it. I think it comes up as donation, but obviously the explanation is there. You can go on to that, and I think there's a button that's as small as £10. We're doing. I've got a thing there which is early adopter membership, which is for 250. But we're not going to be churlish here. We recognize that everybody's participation is important, and I personally am of the conviction that when we come to talk with the bigger investment houses, for us to be able to say, look, these are early adopters. These are the people that are behind what we're doing. This is the scope and the breadth and the geography, et cetera, of what is out there. That is an incentive for them, because they can see this is something much bigger than just getting one or two social impact investors. Now, obviously, there may be people on the call that can afford a lot more. That's fine, that they may want to have a further conversation with myself because they are thinking they might want to take a more substantial stakeholding in the operation. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Let's have that conversation. So essentially, what am I saying? There is no minimum. And, it doesn't cost you anything to, well, to use an English colloquialism, to be rent-a-gob. Talk about it, promote it, give it oxygen, get it out there. We don't want to do this without jewelers. That's where I came from. That's my origin as a jeweler, going and standing in a river with Oro Verde in the Colombian jungle long before any of this narrative was starting. Talking with Christina, forming ARM, doing all those sorts of things. That's the origin of this entire movement that we're now in. Traceability, transparency, accountability, participation, inclusion, empowerment. These are all words that we use, and I think we've managed to successfully encapsulate the heart and the spirit of what we're all aspiring to in PeaceGold. And who knows where it will end up. But what I can guarantee is it will be a great adventure, and we don't want to do it alone. We want to do it with as many people as we possibly can. I've got no color left in my hair to lose, so I've got nothing to lose.
I want to pop in one more time. Thank you. So I'm able to monitor the form, and it looks like we've had, we have a lot of people, and we have 3 people on. I think that have signed the form pledged so far. I think it's most important that if this is something that you think you would get involved in the future, regardless of being able to pledge any amount at this time, fill out that form, because being able to go to funders, larger funders in the future that are going to be able to underwrite the huge figures that are required for this, they need to know who's already interested. How is this going to work? And the fact that jewelers who face the public with their gold and their commitments are a huge part of the story. Your name associated with this has value. So I'm going to drop the link to that pledge form again, and you'll see that the dollar amount is voluntary. You're not obligated to state an amount at this time. Your name and your the name of your business, if you have one, are the most important thing to add in this moment in time.
Can I just pick up quickly on Karen's question? Just don't want it to flick through. How will we maintain traceability and standards like the craft code in the long term? Well, I mean, that is part of our due diligence investment. That is part of our system investment. We start with a pit a pit that is then linked to a cooperative. We then have a system within the cooperative. We know each pit. We have a GPS location on it, and we know roughly what the production from that pit is. And then the material from that pit travels to the cooperative, and then the cooperative sell that into the system. It's bagged and tagged. It's then vaulted. We have an arrangement with a bank in Bunia where all the gold is vaulted. So it's not sitting in a safe in an office that we might have. It's sitting in the vault in the bank. Obviously, with our certification, the regional certification mechanism requires us to be able to meet a very high standard of due diligence and traceability and accountability in order to secure blue status on each site. So every site will receive blue status. And that's under the ICGLR regional certification mechanism. And once that site is blue flagged, so we have an audit system that we have to undertake as an exporter, which requires us to put all of that information there, and we will keep very detailed records of every cooperative, all the members, all the production, dates, deliveries, payments. All the payments are made bank to bank and receipted. Nothing, there is no cash paid. And then obviously all of that has got to be submitted to the authorities for inspection before they will essentially give you the export certificate, which comes in the form of an ICGLR certificate, which you then have to, they give it a tax value on your export. We have a security system in place for how we move the gold, and you'll excuse me if I don't go into that in detail. We have a secure mechanism for removing the gold from the country. And we obviously have a secure delivery framework. So all of that will go up onto data stake. Any active participant, that whether they're an individual jeweler or a large brand or an investor, will have access to the data stake project so they can see exactly what is going on. That it will also include civil society organizations, that will also include human rights organizations. So if a human rights organization reports that in this district there is a problem, they can record that on our data stake platform, which allows us to see, oh, we might have a problem here. So we need to get on with that and start to address it. There is always a but in these things. No system, as anybody that lives in the West will know, is perfect. We're all subject to erroneous actors. So the reality is we do have to have independent audits done. We will be doing quarterly reporting internally, and we will be doing an annual third-party audit of the entire supply chain, which will also include recommendations for improvement. So this is an exercise not only in compliance, but also in how do we continue to self-improve to get to best in class. That's not going to happen overnight, but if the gold leaves the country under an ICGLR certificate, there are some basic transparency legal requirements according to the regional certification mechanism, which we have had to have complied with.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much. Is there any other questions that are popping up?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So
Yeah.
One from Bob. So how are you going to bring traditional retailers into the loop rather than DTC designers? And then another question from Edward around if we pledge money, do we have equity? So I don't know if you wanted to address those two, Greg.
On the equity question, the answer is immediately no. We're not issuing any shares until we have secured our large impact investor or investors, the capital event. This is not a small budget initiative. So at that point, we will then wrap up all the money which has been pledged or paid into the system to date, and obviously we will have that recorded. against the valuation, and then we will come to an equitable arrangement with each individual. But the intention is certainly there to give people a solid stakeholding, whether we call it a shareholding, stakeholding, whatever it is, you know, to have a genuine slice of the pie in the same way that the miners do. We want the jewelers to, large or small. How do we get the larger brands on board? Well, you know, probably like we did with all the other stuff, just kind of one by one. And we will have a sales and marketing strategy. Phase 1 is get the gold to market. Phase 2 is build out the market into the international community. But I don't want to get ahead of myself at the moment, but we do know of one brand that has expressed an interest in a fairly sizable chunk per annum. So, you know, I don't think we're going to have a problem with marketing it and selling it into. But remember, from our perspective, from a business perspective, we already have an off-taker. So we're not out of pocket in this whole process. So the jewelers coming on board and the bigger brands coming on board, that is bonus, bonus, bonus all the way through. That's value add, and that's narrative, that's oxygen, that's publicity. You know, that's us building the narrative out into the international community. So, you know, and that's obviously part of our plan.
And in terms of just touching again on the time frames, is it likely to be like 5 years plus for the materials to be ready to go to market?
No, it won't be that. I mean, I'd love to be able to give you a date. I can't. I think with experience, the legal compliance side of things for us in regards to the DRC mineral code is probably going to take us 9 to 12 months. But you know, please don't hold me over the fire on that. It could be quicker. And to answer Edward Fleming's question, are there any UK casters interested? I don't know. Why don't you go out and get us some, pal? No, there isn't at the moment. No, but this is the first conversation that we've had with the jewelry community. Certainly not going to be the last one.
I will add to that during the Zahaba Safi project, there were UK casters interested in DRC gold. Yeah. So potentially.
Thank you, Cecilia.
So unless there's any more questions, or Christine, you think I've missed any, I think that is all the questions for now.
Thank you. I mean, just by way of conclusion, thank you all very much for giving up your time and listening to what we've had to say. I've had my 2 co-directors on here. They've been taking notes. They'll, you know, we're looking forward to hearing from you. There is a business plan available if you'd like it. And we are totally open to further, more detailed conversations. All you have to do is email Greg Valerio at PeaceGold.org and you will be very, very happy to talk. Please don't exclude yourself because you think you're too small.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it, to remember that, just so we can all get involved as a community, as you say, as a movement. You know, it's really, really exciting. So thank you so much for that, Greg. And yeah, I think you can tell by the comments coming in through the chat that everybody is hugely inspired and excited by it. So that's a really, really good, positive, strong start to putting out there to the jewelry community. And, you know,
word is going to spread, you know. It's just that people are just really dying to get involved and to see this come into action, because it is just such a trailblazing initiative. So yeah, well done you guys for all the hard graft and Congolese negotiations that I'm sure you've been through.
Yeah, we don't. Well, I don't do those on my own. We have a whole team out there, Jean-Claude and Ali and others. We're all in that room together.
Yeah.
And it's Greg Valerio at PeaceGold.org.
Okay. Oh yes. Let's get that. Okay, well, thank you. So just as a quick, this is timed out perfectly, isn't it? So just as a quick reminder, so if there is any other questions that come in, Greg will be happy to answer them, and we'll feed them back out to you when we send the recording. I believe everybody on the call is going to get a link to this recording when it's ready to go. Okay. So thanks again to Greg and to Christina for making this, happen, and to well, I'm part of Fair Luxury. You guys are brilliant. Do sign up for newsletters if you haven't already. Do get involved in the Fair Luxury bunch as well, because we've always got stuff going on, and it's a really good place to sort of join in and keep and see what's going on and keep up to date with things. And I think that is, anybody else got anything to add, to squeeze on in the end there? No? Alrighty. Well, we will keep you all posted. Thanks so much again for turning up and to throwing your enthusiasm and creativity at this. It's going to be fantastic. Watch this space.
Thanks, everybody. Bless you all.
Cheers.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning.